right, let's go ahead and get started on working on our overlapping hearts picture. You are going to need a blank sheet of white paper, and we are going to need another sheet of paper that we're going to use to create a heart stencil. I already have one made here, but I'm going to show you how easy it is to make a stencil for your heart. You're going to want to use another sheet of paper, or you can even use something a little bit thicker, like this is a piece of thin cardboard. You are going to fold it in half like you're making a card, crease it together, and then you are going to draw a half heart shape on the creased side. You're going to use a marker or a pencil, and you're going to create a half a heart shape. So you can see what the half of the heart looks like here. It almost looks like an ear. So I'm going to draw up and around and come down to make a point. Once you have that drawn, then you can use some scissors to cut it out. And when you open it, you will have a full heart. So I'm going to go ahead and cut it out, and now I have a heart stencil to use. Once you cut it out, if you want to do some extra cutting on it, maybe you want to make your heart a little bit smaller or skinnier, all you have to do is just trim around the edges until you are happy with your heart. So I might trim a little extra off here to make a little bit smaller heart. Perfect. And I'm going to use this as my stencil for my picture. So I'm going to get rid of all these extra little scrap pieces. And I'm going to go ahead and use a Sharpie to start tracing my hearts. I'm going to start with one over here in the corner. So I'm going to use my hand that's not my drawing hand to be my anchor. It's going to hold my stencil in place while my drawing hand can draw. So I'm going to hold it down, work around, moving my fingers so I can get around in those spaces. And I'm going to go boop, all the way around to make my first heart. But now we want to overlap our hearts. We want to start to make it where the hearts don't go side by side, but they actually go on top of each other. And you can turn your heart any way you want. It can overlap at any part. I'm going to put one right here. So I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to hold it down, use my drawing hand to draw my heart all the way down and around. So now I have two hearts and they're overlapping. You can see here where they overlap. Overlap meaning that one thing goes on top of another. So you can see that this heart that I just drew went on top of this heart. So now I'm going to go ahead and do another one. I might want to turn this one this way. And maybe you want to even only do half of the heart. Maybe you want some that's hanging off the page. I could even maybe squeeze the bottom part of the heart up here in the corner. So now I have a picture that has some overlapping hearts. You can see the overlap that is happening here and here. Can you overlap as many times as you want? Sure, maybe you want to squeeze in part of the heart over here that overlaps into 1, 2 hearts. You can absolutely continue to make your overlaps as many times as you want. I'm going to stop right here for mine, and I'm going to now go ahead and focus on the parts where the overlap happens. Where I see that those two hearts have crossed over each other, I'm going to add in some patterns. So I'm going to use my Sharpie to draw in different patterns. Like for example, I might want to do stripes. Maybe over here I want to do some open polka dots or circles. Over here I might want to do some zigzag patterns. So think about how you could use different lines or different shapes to make different patterns and designs. I could even do some squares. And I think I have now covered all of my overlapping space. Let's check. I have some overlap that happened here, got it, here, got it, here, and here, perfect. Now in all these other open spaces, we're gonna leave those open. So now that I have everything drawn out, we're gonna move over into coloring. You can use any materials you want to color in your heart. I'm gonna keep it simple today, and I'm just going to use crayons. If you have other materials that you want to use, like maybe you also want to include some markers, or you have oil pastels, watercolor, you definitely can. I'm just going to keep it simple with the crayons in case there's some people at home who don't have all of the supplies that you might have. So I'm going to use my crayons to start coloring in my patterns. I'm also using my crayon to go a little bit darker around the edges to make that area stand out a little bit more. I trace darker around each circle, And then I'm pushing down just a little bit harder with my crayon so I have a darker color. So you can do light and dark. Remember, if you want it to be darker, you're gonna push down harder. If you want your color to be lighter, like I did in the background, you're going to push down lightly. Another fun trick that I love to do with crayons is also overlapping the colors. When you have colored lightly, like I did here, I can also go back in with another color and I can overlap some color there, meaning I'm putting one color on top of another to kind of make a new color. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and move over to my next pattern. I'm gonna now go over to my squares. Let's do some orange squares. Dark around the edges and I'll color lightly in the center. Maybe I'll do a mix of yellow and green for the background. Let's go down to my last pattern section here. All right. So now that I've colored in all my areas where I have pattern, I can take a look at my artwork and I can make a decision. Since I only have 4 places where I have pattern, do I need to maybe include some more areas of overlap to make my artwork look more balanced or more interesting? Let me think about using my stencil. Maybe I might want to add in another overlapping heart down here. So now I have another section of overlap. So I have some in this corner, a little bit on the sides, a little bit up here in the middle. Maybe I might also want to do a bottom edge of the heart over here. So I'm just adding in a few more spaces now that I see with it colored. I might want to add in more to make it a little more interesting. So I did some polka dot stripes. Maybe I want to do some fun little squiggly patterns. And over in this small section, I might do some little X's. Now I can go ahead and choose my colors for those. All right. Now I can do another quick assessment. Is there anywhere else I need to finish adding in some different patterns? Anything else I could overlap? If you think you are happy with it, there's nothing else you want to add, then you want to stop here with any more overlap and you're ready to move on to coloring in your hearts and the background. We want to talk about those 2 different spaces as positive and negative space. Anywhere you have your heart drawn, that is your positive space. Anywhere that is around your hearts, like the background area, that's your negative space. So we're going to include some different designs on our positive and negative space. Now, like I said, you can just use crayons for this. If you want to just finish coloring it all in with one color, like that's fine. If you want to do one color in the background and all your hearts the same, if you want to change them up and make them different colors, you can also do fun things with texture. I have some of these texture plates, which are different pattern raised textures on the plate, and you color over it with a crayon and it makes these cool textures. If you have something like this at home, you can use these. If you don't have texture plates, you could also look for something in your house that has natural texture on it, and you could try using that. Like maybe you go over to the wall and you hold your picture up on the wall and you color on top of it to get that wall texture. I'll show you what this looks like. Let's use this side with the polka dots. If I want to put some polka dots inside this heart, I put my texture plate underneath and I use my crayon to color on top to start to make those polka dots show through. So anywhere that I'm pressing down with my crayon, you are going to see what pattern I have underneath it, that texture plate showing through. So now you can see all those fun little circles. So you want to make sure you're not pressing down too hard. You're just kind of quickly coloring over so it picks up that texture underneath. So I'm going to go ahead and finish filling in all of my hearts with different textures. And now that I have all of my hearts finished being filled in with different textures and different patterns and designs, I'm going to go ahead and finish filling in my white space. Before I do that, I'm going to use this purple to do some outlining around all of my hearts on my page. I'm going to go ahead and finish filling in all the outlines first. And now I'm going to use my color to finish coloring in the inside, and I'm going to do red, since I think of red as being my Valentine's Day color. And I'm not doing any texture underneath here. I'm just quickly coloring with my crayon, kind of turned on its side to fill in that empty space. Remember, this is our negative space. Our positive space is the areas where we did our hearts, where we added patterns and textures. And now our negative space is just going to be solid red with the purple outline. And this is our final piece using our positive and our negative space. different types of patterns and textures. We are working with a lot of things here. Overlap, you have covered lots of fun things in this lesson. And I hope you guys love it as much as I do. These are gonna make awesome artworks for Valentine's Day. You could hang it up in your room, give it to a family member or a friend, tell them how much they mean to you. If you do not have access to any texture plates and you don't want to buy any, you can also make your own. Using adult permission and supervision, you can use a hot glue gun on like a piece of poster board or thicker paper, and you can make your own patterns and designs. Let it dry so it's not wet anymore, it's not hot, it's dried onto my page. And this also works like a texture plate. So I can use my crayon to color over it and cover over it so you can see the pattern that I've made, or the texture that I made. So you can see the zigzags over here on this side, just like you see underneath here. And then I have the waves with the polka dots over here. So there's that wave showing through. You can see some of those polka dots in there too. So you can always make your own at home if you do not have your own texture plates. Again, you can also look for things in your house that have texture that you could color on. Maybe use the bottom of a shoe, or like I said, the wall. You might find a different texture on a plate. You can totally use those. Just be mindful when you're coloring your textures. Don't push down too hard. If you push down too hard, sometimes you might lose your pattern. So try to keep your crayon going lightly over your pattern.